Thank you so much for paying attention and listening to my show. And I say pay attention because oftentimes when I'm doing these interviews, I'm looking for and trying to get little bits of information out that help people not only navigate the political environment, but oftentimes focus on things in our communities. And in this series, I'm be working on education because I'm putting together this series of educational types of interviews so you can find not only where education is under attack in America, but things that parents can do, people can do to help improve it on a community level, a state level, which at the end of the day helps fight for rights in our country and fight for freedom in our country. And it's one of those things that helps preserve the needs of our country. And with me today in this interview is Diana Hartmann. Diana, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on my show.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for having me.
Well, Diana, tell a little bit about yourself and what your job is there in Illinois. I met you at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. I know you were a guest there, and I felt it was important when I met you. You know, we had a nice little conversation, and I wanted to get a lot of your information out to the audience. So tell them a little bit about yourself so when we get started, they'll know where your background is.
Sure. I am an elected official in the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois has regional offices of education, which is a government oversight over everyone in your jurisdiction. You could be a single county if your population is big enough, or you might be multi-county down south in the state where population isn't, as big. So the government oversight, I have 18 school districts underneath me. That's over 80 some schools in McHenry County, which is the sixth largest county in the state, Republican. And some of our government oversight is compliance to state statutes. Also, all of the safety of buildings, we go and check every building, and there's a checklist of, all the compliance that needs to be for safety and security of buildings. We have fiscal responsibilities. There's so many. We do all the school bus driver training. We run a safe school, and by statute, that's for 6th through 12th graders. That's in lieu of expulsion from districts, so they are not just in the pipeline to like jail or something like that. That we can get them back on track in education or keep them on track in education. And that we do fingerprinting. We have a Pearson testing center. We do professional development for all the educators and administrators in the region. We have a licensure specialist. We have the truancy officer. The truancy comes from our office. So it goes on and on and on and on. And I don't want to bore you with all that.
Cover just about everything, that goes on and through the school system. Would that be kind of an accurate? I know it's a really blanket umbrella type of statement, but is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a little bit. And then we do not create any policy, but we go to Springfield, our state capital, and we work closely with the Illinois State Board of Education and the state superintendent, and then also with our legislators trying to, lobby for what we need and what we want.
Is your position kind of like the liaison between the public and the bureaucrats, or the bureaucrat, or the it's almost kind of like it's almost like it's a three-legged stool. It looks kind of like you get the school system on top, and you're connected to and you work with the legislators, the teachers, and the bureaucrats that are running the school system. I don't know if you're more of a tier where you're kind of like below the bureaucrats, or you're kind of like I said, that three-legged stool where you're kind of the support system for the school, but yet you're connected to and work with legislators and everything. You're kind of the elected side of the bureaucratic side. Is that kind of
it is a very interesting dynamic. So this is the way I kind of explain it. So I consider us a service organization. So I'm here to serve parents and also districts. If a parent calls with a question, I'm going to tell the parent their rights and help them navigate the situation. If a district calls, I'm going to do the same thing. I don't mediate typically between a parent and a district, but I let both sides know what the facts are and what the legal ramifications and things like that. We definitely have some government oversight. Of course, superintendents don't answer to me; they answer to their local school boards. But we're here to provide them with answers on new statutes. You know, we get a new group, and we get a lot of new laws every year. Some good, some bad. And how to navigate through that. And then there's a lot of just normal annual requirements that have to be turned in from annual financial reports and budgets and things like that. So
I heard you say school board. So you all, in addition to your position, you all also have a school board.
right. So the districts are under local control. They have an elected school board that's non-paid citizens in that area, and their number one job is to hire a superintendent and then adopt policy for the
So you
local
all
school
kind of
board.
work. You are kind of like you are kind of like the oversight for the then so then you are like the seat of the stool. No, kind of like you're actually overseeing the school board, overseeing and working with the elected officials that are creating the policy, and then you're
Correct.
working with the teachers and the bureaucratic part of the actual school system.
Mhm. And it's also in Illinois school code that we can unseat an elected school board member as
Nice.
well. And so, of course, we have
You got a
people
little
that,
teeth in your position then.
we don't exercise that one, because we believe in democracy, and the way to, handle that is vote a different person in is typically, where that should lie. In my opinion, not in the opinion of just taking people out of seats that you don't like their, political philosophy or their whatever philosophy that they
So
have.
teeth in the seat. So in your position, you got some teeth. I remember I said your position was kind of like the seat of the stool,
Right.
and so I like this, but I like the fact that you have publicly said, which I think is a strong statement, that you don't over abuse that power. That you encourage,
Absolutely.
if somebody is not doing their job, that you would encourage an election instead of an unseating of them. Like you would do it through a political, a democratic process instead of using the teeth type of power,
Correct.
control. So let's talk about some questions that I have for you about things that are going on there, and kind of a microcosm of what we're seeing across the country. I regularly talk about where we're losing freedom in America, but I'd like to ask you a twofold question pertaining to that, and where's education under attack in America, or in your school system more specifically, but where is freedom also under attack? Because I think that the two are connected. We can't have freedom without education, and it's hard to have freedom if you're not educated. So where are those two things under attack in our educational system?
Well, on the question of what's under attack, it kind of depends on where you are. As I was just briefly mentioning, you could be at a district 10 miles away from another district, and they have completely different fights going on. And that all stems from the families that are there, and a little bit of the culture, a little bit of the hot button issues that we're seeing nationally, and perhaps, perhaps there's some infighting on a school board and things like that. So that's first and foremost. And I've always been an educator in Illinois, so I am not, I can't put out a state and say, like, Indiana, what's their school system? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know the structure. I don't know those things. Because I've always been in Illinois, and we have our own unique structure and unique funding. So all of our school funding is local control. And of course, school funding is a topic probably across the nation as well. In Illinois, that's local control. I would never want it to go to the state. You probably know a little bit of the history of Illinois, where we've got 4 or 5 governors that have been to prison. And then we have this monster of Chicago that is a hotbed of frustration in my head, and Cook County. So I would never want it to go to Springfield, and I would keep local control for sure. So that's a hot, definitely a hot button issue, is how schools should be funded, and that's across the nation. Another hot button is the teacher pensions. And although I'm Republican and I believe in fiscal responsibility, I believe our police, our firefighters, our teachers, those are the backbone of our communities. And I want to get back to family-oriented communities and communities as a whole, the way I envision it from, the 70s or 80s when I was growing up. And I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm just going to speak for my parents. My parents were a little bit older parents than my friends' parents. And, I believe maybe when the 60s came around, I wasn't born yet. I came in the 70s, but, like when the 60s came around and they saw things going in culture with, the hippies and all of that. I think we're kind of in that same era. And I feel like I'm probably in that same era now as some of the things we're seeing. But I think, that if something was promised to go into that field, that should be there. And I don't agree with changing the pension system when somebody's already in and started. So I don't know why we talk about things in silos. Like, why aren't we talking about our welfare system? Why can't we fund these for our police, our firefighters, our educators, and our civil servants? Why can't we fund that by doing something different with our welfare system? In my opinion, there should be no government handout with something in return. Like if they need job training, or if that person needs assistance and they need to show up and help. Yes, there might be some disability situations where people don't have the capacity, and that's a different story. But I think there's definitely a lot of welfare that is handed out that we should not be, we should have a completely different system. And that I think would fund all of our needs of infrastructure and public safety, federal safety, all of that. So those are bigger pictures.
And what I like is that while you gave us a big picture, I'm going to try to summarize more as just like a listener would, or the gist of it is basically what I've heard is that the way we fund our education system and the people that are most important now, and I'll kind of lump in the people that are most important to our society, like firefighters and police, should be rearranged, if anything, in a way that it encourages more people to get involved in those jobs, but also safeguards those jobs without putting the burden on government in the long run.
Oh, definitely. I mean, those are going to come from taxpayer dollars. And when they say we don't have the money, we do. We're just spending it in other areas. Like, we have to have our priorities straight, and we have to have systems that make sense. And I don't think our welfare systems make sense, and what we fund sometimes doesn't make sense. So
correct. I agree with you 100%. That's when I do that show, I'll bring you on for that series.
Please.
Please. And we've talked a little bit politically, but we've also talked about, different parts of these segments of our society that are under attack. But part of, I think, what happens is politics gets involved, narratives get involved, and then before we know it, becomes a left or right issue.
Yes.
And that division, I think, hurts every part of our society, whether it's school, education, of course, or medical or anything like that. But does our educational system flourish under a particular administration or a particular political party, or do you find that it doesn't matter what party is in office, it's all going to operate the same? What is your opinion on that?
Well, for Illinois, we have been led by blue for a very, very long time, or had some control of blue for a very, very long time. So I don't know it a different way. I think from the feds, there's not as much of a trickle down as our state. But what I think, first and foremost, I believe that our tax dollars should be for safety and security, and then education, definitely from federal to local. Those are our key components for sure. And when we talk about federal, I think one of the biggest things that we could do, and if Trump becomes president again, that I would love to see, and this comes from federal, it's not even a state initiative, is getting rid of the boxes of white, Black, African American, Hispanic, and Asian. I think that is the worst idea ever. I believe in one race. It's called the human race. And outside of that, everything is ethnicity. And besides going back from a grandparent, I would probably say 86% of people don't even know what ethnic makeup they are.
You
And
do 24 and me, and you'll realize that you might not be as
right,
white or black as you thought you were.
right. And it's just a ridiculous theory. It's completely ridiculous. And even more so, what I don't like, and this is the part that if what's under attack in schools, what I see, and this is the biggest thing when we're talking about equity and diversity. Well, they're only talking about 2 or 3 groups. And when we hear that in schools, I only hear the people that are promoting equity and diversity talking about a few groups. And when we have those boxes, I think the term white is completely offensive, because you just, with a brushstroke, took away Irish, German, Italian.
Great point.
Polish. You took away all of these ethnicities that we cannot celebrate in a school now or highlight. What do we highlight? We highlight, we have a lot of Hispanic culture that's in schools. We do a lot of Black history. And I would say those are great things. Those are great things to highlight, but not in a vacuum of only them. And because white is not a culture. There might be, like I said, there might be a Serbian culture. There might be, Iranian students. There's students from everywhere. We typically, high schools have, 80, 70 different languages that could be spoken at home, or in a generation or two. And we completely forget about all of that. And the other thing I see in schools, and I was a 20-year high school person, so my head is really high school. When I think, I just completely go to high school. And what I see a lot is that, and it's great that we're a nation of immigrants, and we still are, and that's wonderful. But I really think we're so afraid to teach what is the culture of America, what should that look like, and talk about those in our history classes and our civic classes. And not doing it by disparaging any other culture, but America definitely has something we can define out in state, and not just talk about going to the polls and voting. I mean, there's more meat to it than that, and why it was built the way it was built, and why certain things happen. And this whole movement of erasing history and taking down monuments and what I would call BS like that.
Right.
That's ridiculous, and changing the name of schools and all of that, right? I mean, if we want to go down that road, I don't think there'd be a society left that we couldn't
Right.
erase. I mean, at one point there was people feeding people to lions for entertainment, and we didn't get rid of the Olympics because that was happening, so it's like, it's so
wow,
ridiculous.
Diana. Look, this is one of the reasons why I marked you. I told you as something you must interview, because you got so much great little thoughts and information. And who would have thunk? I mean, that's a great. Should we get rid of the Olympics because they started with the Romans feeding Catholics, or sacrificing religious people? And I love that. But I'll tell you what else that I am taking away, and we got a few more minutes left of this interview. But so far, you have just wowed me with the check the boxes part. I love the idea of how you said we should take away white, Black, Hispanic, on the boxes, because white takes away, so many other cultures as that are so many subsets of white, the same as Black. Now we're finding people that consider themselves Black that maybe, have a one Black parent, or maybe that, maybe they're Indian and consider themselves Black, or maybe, they're different from different countries and consider themselves Black, and they've given up their identity as a Black person, so to speak, to what country they most associate with. I love that. That's a fantastic thought. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna use that one for a long time.
Wonderful,
I'll
wonderful.
steal it, but I'm gonna give you credit for it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So if I become president, that's what I'm working on for
Hey,
sure.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's just so much more divisive than it needs to be. And yes, there's always room. I grew up in a rural area in Illinois, and when I went through social studies classes, there's a lot of things that I wasn't taught. We didn't have any diversity in our little rural area. When I say little, there was 125 kids, freshmen through seniors. I had the same English teacher all 4 years of high school. I had the same math teacher. I had the same social studies teacher. I had the same science teacher since the sixth grade. I mean,
You are from a
but
little
I made
bitty
it.
town.
It was a small town, but I made it, right? I made it. I took whatever I did there. And, as long as you teach me how to read and write and do arithmetic, I can figure out the rest for myself. But
Well,
go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
no. A minute ago, you mentioned if you're a president, and you made me think of another question. Do you think education is better under certain administrations, or do you think it would be better under a Trump administration? And if so, how? It kind of goes back to that political,
Yes.
range or political party questions. I'm tying that back into that. Where does it matter who's in office, or does it matter what party is in office?
Well, it depends what the Congress is as well, of course. I think that the the noise from the far left of things on sexuality and the fight against religion or values that came from the foundations of religion, um, and some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are kind of like the big three that I hear a lot about, and those are all coming from the left. So when you say, would it be different? My goodness, I'd hope so. I'd hope so, that we wouldn't have to put as much attention on that. And there's this misguided idea that perhaps if there's a Republican, that students that might be identifying as LGBTQ or might be in a minority of ethnicity in a school wouldn't have the same opportunities or the same respect as other people in the school, and that's just not true. I think that there's more respect when people aren't pitted against all of these little minutia of should there
Right.
be this in the curriculum or this in the curriculum or this in the curriculum. Let's just treat everybody with respect, and whatever your belief is on LGBTQ, whether that you believe people are born that way or choose to practice that way or whatever, in a K through 12 school system, it shouldn't come up in the curriculum that often. I do dislike, I have to be true and honest, that I do dislike that there's a push to put, let's make sure we have books that, of the stories of our fourth grader, the two moms or the two dads or the whatever.
Right.
I don't agree with that. I do see a push for those types of things. I believe in respect, so if there's a child that comes from a family, like there's nothing should be said disparagingly about that family in a school setting.
That's a great point. I'm gonna interrupt you on, is that instead of trying to teach, two same-sex parents or LGBTQ or whatever the case may be, teach respect, because respect covers everybody's beliefs, every
Mhm.
ethnicity, every, narrative. It covers everything. Just teach respect. And when you teach respect, you not only teach and combine that with going back to teaching critical thinking in schools. Now students, kids, young adults, which become, the people in our society later, that contribute, they become respectful of each other. And we have a society that it might be able to say, hey, I don't like that, but I respect you. And now we get a society of people that are going to be able to operate more efficiently, and also, I think, fiscally more responsible too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you is and I want to go back to federal government a little bit, but I also want to make another point. Again, Diana, you have made so many great points and in this interview that I got to tell you are going to be great takeaways. But one thing that you said that I have a lot that makes me have a lot of respect for you, when you keep talking about as things pertain to Illinois. I've asked you a bunch of federal questions, and you keep coming back to as it pertains to my district or Illinois. I think that's so important, especially when it comes to issues. And I'm not going to go into this, but they're talking about the pro-life, pro-choice abortion issue, and there's argument on that whether it should have been a state, back to the states or not. I think that example on every topic is important, because if we realize that we have more control over issues in our own state than we do on a federal level, we not only become better as a state and as a community, we become stronger as individuals, and our personalities, our individualism is even more powerful on a national level when we bring that down to a state level. So bringing education to a state level, respecting that 10th Amendment, bringing it back down to a community level, I think is very important to bring up, that you made a point of saying. So let's talk about the Department of Education, because the
Sure.
Department of Education, being a federal bureaucracy, I believe has pierced the 10th Amendment veil for every state, in that that it gets to inject on a federal, it gets to inject those federal narratives that got many people elected into a state level with the federal tax dollars. So it says, hey, state of Illinois, hey, state of Louisiana, where I am, if you teach this, you're going to get this little $1 billion over here. So the states go, oh, me, I'll take that $1 billion. We just got to teach a little bit of DEI, a little bit of CRT, and we're all good. Everybody's be good at the end of the day. We got that $1 billion in less taxes, and we can boast to our citizens that it's not all on you. We're taking some money from the federal government. But at the end of this day, at the end of 10 years, 20 years, we find that slippery slope brings our educational system into a more narrative-driven, ideological-driven criteria instead of an educational-based criteria. So I think it's important that you keep bringing that up. So long story, even short now, do we even need the Department of Education? Should we keep it? Should we get rid of it? Which kind of goes back to that's one of the Trump's agendas, to get rid of it. But, do we need it? Should we get rid of it?
Well, I don't know the effectiveness of the leadership at the Department of Education. They're so far reached for me that I'm not quite sure about that. I looked up their budget, which
Good
was
point, by the way.
Yeah, $68 million, billion dollars, sorry, billion with a B dollars. And, I know you can't change one thing in isolation typically without a problem. So right now, some of that $68 billion is funding our title grants that go to schools. So we're talking, the feds are responsible for IDEA, which is our children with disabilities and special education and IEPs, and that's all law from federal. They did have obviously some pandemic recovery, the ESSER funds. And I think what you were talking about, like you have to do XYZ to enable to get some of the dollars. And that kind of went with ESSER,
right.
But it was, what you had to publish online and things like that, what you were doing with the dollars. And yeah, some people ended up with, a pallet of hand sanitizer that goes bad in, 6 months, and they spent $14,000 on it or whatever, like
Right.
It's ridiculous. Like you're buying all this crap for, it's ridiculous. And that's one of the problems I do have. And that goes down to a state level, the way our grant systems work and the way that most people want to spend all the money. For example, I'll make it really simple. If you wanted to buy a curriculum for a school and the grant money you received was $13,000 and the curriculum only cost you $10,000, well, let's try to do the curriculum with fidelity first. But people are rushing around trying to figure out what do I do with the $3,000? Should I buy these fancy bookmarks? Oh, let's put them in red because the kids really love red, and let's buy these stickers for. Now, why can't we just send the $3,000 back? I mean, those are tax dollars,
right? Exactly.
It's just things like that I see, and that's with any. That's not just education. That's anywhere in like all of the entities that get any types of a grant funding. It's like this use it or lose it. I'm like, send it back. Yes, I mean it's going to be reappropriated, and the people in power aren't the people I want in power, and it's going to go to some stupid welfare thing that somebody gets it that shouldn't be getting it anyway.
Right.
they can show up to get their, their card, their whatever, their handout. They could show up to do something. We could teach them to do something. So, I mean, don't get me started, but I think that kind of needs an overhaul. And then just the competitive grants, right? So when I went on the website, I see that they have some competitive grant opportunities. Well, that makes no sense either. How does that have to do with anything with equity or, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea everywhere.
Right.
So it just
Uh,
doesn't make sense. And the people that usually get the award are, of course, in alignment with whoever's in power. And that's not right for anybody at any time. So, I mean, that's a whole system that I kind of get a little fired up about too.
I see that.
Yes. So not only that, but we have early childhood education. There's Pell Grants, Title Grants, and work assistance, like through our Perkins grants. And Perkins usually typically goes to, in Illinois, we have now turned the corner from everybody's got to go to college. Everybody has to, go to Algebra 2 kind of heights, at least in high school. And now, here, don't get me started on this one. Now, Illinois is saying that I forget which year it is, might be 2026 school year, everybody has to take Spanish. No, they don't.
Right.
No, that is ridiculous. That is so ridiculous. Everybody has to take Spanish. That is such BS. I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of dual language programs across the country. And I'm going to say the majority of them are in Spanish. And that's nice. But we've had several languages here for multiple years. And when did we put the dual language? Chicago has the highest population of Polish people outside of Warsaw. And when do we put dual language programs in for the Polish speaking
Exactly
people?
right.
Like it's just, all of that, I see that in reality, and I know what's going on behind the scenes, and it's BS. It's complete BS.
I
So
highly recommend if you want to hear these statistics, for especially as they pertain to education. Thomas Sowell has a book called Disparities and so it's disparities and is it differences and disparities or disparities and hey, I'll tell you right now while we're live, it is um, discrimination and disparities.
okay,
Thomas Sowell, and he goes through statistics on the education system and how government mandates that have created certain mandates for certain ethnicities, or especially when it comes to education, have in turn hurt us even more. Hurt us more than it ever helped us. I won't be able
absolutely.
to reiterate everything in his book, but I'm going to tell you, it opened up my eyes a whole lot on the mandates, like you're talking about teaching Spanish and what it actually ends up doing, because we as a human race actually segregate ourselves in some ways, but we also educate and diversify ourselves in other ways. And when we do it naturally, it's more beneficial to our communities and our educational system. By the way, he proves that with some of his statistics. But when the government gets involved, it messes things up, and the mandates hurt us all as a human race more than it would ever help us. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. My bachelor's degree is in economics. I didn't go into teaching right away. I went into business. And, I know from my basic economics courses and the most people should from high school, economics, that once you get government involved, you're either going to get a surplus or a deficit of something. You're not going to get a free market, and things are going to be out of whack. And so it's really a never a good paradigm for their involvement, I think.
I
I
love it.
think.
Diana, you have been absolutely amazing. You have been a fantastic guest with a lot of really unique information. That's one of the things I really look for in a guest on the show, is somebody that can bring, value, but different ways of thinking, because ultimately it's and of course, not to bring up the education analogy here, but if we don't give people a variety of opinions and a variety of way of looking at things, we don't achieve that unity that we need in our communities to bring people together on freedom principles, prosperity issues, fiscally responsible issues, And I think that you've been a great contributor for that. I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. I really appreciate you. And I'm gonna have you on again sometime for another
Yeah,
topic.
please do. Thank you so much. And just keep telling everybody, don't check those boxes, check other and write in human, please.
I love it. What is besides that? Do you have any final words that you want to get out there? Any final takeaways? Because that's a great takeaway, though.
That would be the best one for sure. That would be the best one for sure.
Diana, thank you so much. Hang on there 1 second. I'm gonna ask everybody, please share the show. If you find that this is something important, or have another educator that might be have interest in this topic, or not only that, but somebody that this might help change their thinking in a way that makes them help unite their community a little bit more, and it all helps all of us in our state and our country. Please share the show and keep in mind, I got another one coming up. Thank you so much, and have a great day.